Morning. Today I'm going to talk about tattoo conventions, my experience with them, what you can achieve by working at tattoo conventions, and do I still think they are worth it? My name is Mistertroshin. I've been tattooing for over 12 years, and I've done a lot of tattoo conventions, and I have won a bunch of awards at those tattoo conventions, including 6 Best of Show awards. And I have a lot to say about conventions. My first couple of conventions I did when I wasn't even a tattoo artist. I was selling Salon clothing brand in Moscow, Russia, and then in St. Petersburg, Russia. After that, I started tattooing, and a couple years later, I started working at tattoo conventions as a tattoo artist. I was really excited. I was really nervous, and it felt like a new level for me as an artist to be there and to meet other artists and to be able to show my work to the new audience. And then I started going to international conventions in Europe, in Canada, in other countries, and I was able to compare that experience and see what's different about European conventions compared to Russian conventions. And the first thing I can say about it is that European conventions have been around for way longer than Russian conventions. They have way more artists, or at least at that time they had way more people than artists. I'm pretty sure now it's the same thing. And it's a much more interesting experience to be at a tattoo convention, let's say in Paris or Milan or all those big cities. Russian conventions at that time were much slower, not so action-packed, not so busy, but it was still pretty cool because more people recognized me at Russian conventions, and I could talk to more people because my English was even worse than now back then, so I couldn't really speak freely to other people in Europe, for example. And also it felt like European conventions had much higher grade artists. For example, winning an award at a convention in Milan or Paris was way more difficult compared to a Moscow convention. And first couple of years I went to those conventions just to be able to see how it goes, just to be able to meet my heroes if there were any artists that I was looking up to at those conventions. And that was probably the main reason. But everything changed in 2016, I believe, when I started working on my work visa to move to the US. And to get that O1 visa, you are supposed to attend a lot of conventions. You're supposed to prove that you are worth that visa, that you are one of the best in your industry. And one of the ways to prove that is to win a lot of awards at different conventions. So I would say 15 and 16 were the hardest years for me in terms of working at tattoo conventions in Russia and abroad, just because I was trying to do as many conventions as I could, and I was trying to do some bigger and more interesting pieces at those conventions to be able to get some awards, to get some recognition in those conventions. And I got a few awards here and there. I didn't get anything crazy until, I believe, 2016 in Montreal, where I got my first Best of Show. And then I got my second Best of Show right after that in New York. And then pretty much right after that, I got another Best of Show at Golden State Tattoo Convention in California. I had some clients in these countries already. They were able to attend conventions as well and get some smaller awards like Best Black and Gray, Best Portrait, Best Small Black and Gray, Best Sleeve. I believe I got most of my awards because my clients visited some conventions in their areas and just showed my tattoos on them and got those awards, sent me those pictures. And in 2017, at the end of 2017, I was able to move to the US completely legally with O1 visa and with a good amount of awards from different conventions. Now let's talk about tattoo conventions in general. Fun fact, in 2024, the United States is obviously leading in terms of the amount of tattoo conventions. and the US had over 80 tattoo conventions. I think Germany takes the second place with around 20 tattoo conventions a year, but I might be mistaken on these numbers. In general, it just proves that the US is the biggest tattoo market in the world, and tattoo conventions are the most popular here. So with over 80 tattoo conventions and only 50 states, some states have at least 2 tattoo conventions. And they also grow in popularity, not counting 2020 and maybe 2021, which was challenging not just for artists, but for convention organizers as well. I just did some research about it, and it looks like conventions still get more and more visitors every year, and 2024 is even busier than 2019, which is kind of cool, I guess. So what is a tattoo convention? It's usually a huge event at a convention center, and usually those conventions have from few hundreds artists to over 1,000 artists at some of them. They also have some tattoo companies making machines, inks, and all that stuff. They also bring some vendors for food, like food trucks, and maybe even some art galleries that show some stuff. So for a tattoo artist, it means that you can rent a booth for this usually 3 days of the convention, and you can work there. You can sell your merch, you can meet new clients, you can participate in competition, hopefully get some awards, and be able to talk to other artists, be able to network a little bit, maybe even talk to some companies, and maybe even get some sponsorship, which is really cool. And for regular people, tattoo conventions are a good way to get tattooed by your favorite artists. Spend some time, get a couple of drinks, watch a show, because conventions usually have some kind of show on the scene, and just have fun. As an artist who have done a bunch of tattoo conventions all over the world, I can say that at some point it was very exciting when it was new, then it became a necessity when I was working on my visa, and then it just became very boring, and I'm not even sure if there is any point of attending conventions these days. And let me explain why. First of all, if you have visited many tattoo conventions, you might have noticed that most of them are pretty much exactly the same. A bunch of booths, the same layout, same music, exactly the same playlist, pretty much. Same entertainment programs, either some people dancing or showing some magic tricks and stuff like this. And after your 5th or 6th tattoo convention, it just becomes all the same. And for some people it's cool to just see their friends, have a drink, showcase their work. Some people still like doing walk-ins, so they just sit at the convention and rely on people coming in and get some small tattoos during the day. So if that's your thing, enjoy. For me, working at a tattoo convention means that I'm going to try and book a person for all 3 days, or at least 2 days in a row, to try and finish a bigger piece, just so it looks a little bit more impressive, and just so I'm not so bored during those 2 or 3 days. Unfortunately, for most of our clients or potential clients, tattoo conventions somehow mean that artists are supposed to be willing to work either for free or for much cheaper than they usually do. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because every artist attending those conventions pays really good money for the booth. For example, Golden State and New York State, those booths are $1,000, even over $1,000 these days. So as an artist, you are going to spend 3 days of your life at that tattoo convention. You are going to pay over $1,000 to be there and have a booth. You are going to pay for the hotel and all your travel expenses. And at the end, people expect you to do half-price tattoos at that convention. What is the point for us to do that? I don't see a single reason to work at a convention if people expect you to work for less. So for me, if I do a tattoo convention, I try to book a bigger piece. I try to book a more interesting project so I can hopefully show it for best of day or best of show. And now, after 12 years of tattooing, I got a bunch of awards. I visited pretty much all the tattoo conventions in the world except for a few big ones. If I think of doing another convention, it must be something completely different and something completely unique for me to say yes to that opportunity, to that convention. And that almost never happens. I think my last convention was about a year ago, and I've been invited to a few more tattoo conventions during the last year, and I just don't see any reason to do that because it's the same thing. Even if I get a free booth, I'm still gonna have to pay for travels while I could be at home doing something more productive, or I could be just working normally at my shop. I would like to see a completely new format of a convention, and I have some cool ideas for future tattoo conventions, how to make them more interesting, how to get more artists willing to spend their time and money at those conventions. So if there is anybody willing to collaborate with me and organize a tattoo convention with me, I would be happy to discuss that. Until then, I really don't see any point of doing more conventions in my life other than doing some educational events where I can go and teach artists, do some seminars, and do stuff like this. There's just no way I would do another normal, regular tattoo convention anywhere in the world. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you're an artist and you have done a lot of conventions in your career, and what would you do differently about conventions? And do you still think that conventions are worth your time and money? And what are the reasons you are actually visiting conventions? And for normal people just visiting conventions, if it brings you some joy, and if you are having fun visiting those conventions and seeing tattoo artists, maybe even get tattooed, I would love to hear what you are looking for from a tattoo convention. What would you like to see? Or maybe you have visited a convention that was completely different from all others and you would like to see more of these things at different conventions. Please comment below, let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't watched my previous video, it's right here. Make sure to check it out. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.